Well, there, we apologize for coming in a bit late, but it's always better late than never. But good evening, Africa. Bonjour for our Francophone brothers. Dumelang, if you are in the south of the continent, or Jambo for those of us in the East African region. Assalamu alaikum to those in the north. My name is Yusuf Ibrahim, and you are in time for another hour of Bottomline Africa, the show that puts a pulse and helps you make sense of events across this beautiful continent. We have a great show lined up for you this evening, and we'll be looking at the role of the youth in transforming leadership in this continent. We'll have conversations with our reporter Duncan Khaemba on the political developments in Kenya. Geoffrey Kawese joins us from Kampala, Uganda, to talk about a judge's strike there. Also from Johannesburg, Angelo Fick is on standby to let us in on the latest impeachment proceedings against President Jacob Zuma. We also have Samantha Maina, as well as Catherine Nyambura, who is Advocacy Officer with Femnet, and George Gashara, who is the Managing Partner at Haver Fund. But first, let us look at the Africa in 60 seconds. Kenya's opposition leader Raila Odinga threatens to boycott repeat polls demanding further consultations. The head of Lesotho Defense Forces shot dead by his subordinates in unclear circumstances. South African Constitutional Court begins hearing a case in which the country's opposition is making one last attempt to impeach Zuma. And why African continent is banking on its youth to transform its governance. Welcome once again. If you're just joining us, the program begins right now, and we will start with a Twitter poll question tonight, and we're asking you, do you think Africa is ready for youthful leadership? Let me just take that again. Do you think Africa is ready for youthful leadership? Of course, this question comes because of that topic that we're going to discuss tonight, that is about the role of youth in transforming leadership in Africa. You know the drill. You can as well go to Twitter. Our Twitter handle is at KTN News. You can tweet me at Yusuf Ibra, and I'll definitely go through some of your views within this program. But first things first, we want to begin from right here at home, where Kenya's opposition leader Raila Odinga has said that he will not take part in the presidential election rerun slated for 17th of October, quote-unquote, without legal and constitutional guarantees. Last week, the Supreme Court annulled August election results, saying the Electoral Commission, that is IEBC, had not followed the constitution. Incumbent President Uhuru Kenyatta was declared the winner by the IEBC. His threat came as the IEBC chair Wafula Chebukati named a six-man team to conduct the presidential election. In the fresh changes, the IEBC ICT head Gideon Muhati has been replaced by Albert Gogo.
You could not do a mistake twice and expect to get different results. We know exactly what transpired in these last elections. We know what the IEBC did, and we know that if we were to go back, there will be no different results. And that's why we have said that there will be no elections on the 17th of October until some of the conditions which you have spelled out in the statement are met by the IEBC.
Clearly, the back and forth between the ruling Jubilee Party and the opposition NASA over the IEBC as it is currently constituted continue to rage. And just to tell us more on this developing story, we're now joined live by our senior political reporter Duncan Khaemba from our I&M studios. Now, Khaemba, good evening. The ruling Jubilee Party have been saying time and again that the opposition is not ready for election. Do you think this statement by the opposition, Raila Odinga, is going to give Jubilee some sort of fodder this time round? And what are these things that the opposition leader wants rectified before we go to the other election?
Well, clearly, as they hit the ground, they've actually hit the ground in a fresh round of campaigns, and it's all about putting your ear on the ground and knowing what the other side is saying and making political capital out of it. You've seen how now NASA seems to be condemning Jubilee on the apparent attacks on the judiciary, while on the other hand, Jubilee is also hammering NASA that they are attacking IEBC. So it depends on what side of the coin you are looking at. And therefore, with regard to the statements by NASA principal, of course, they know too well that they know loopholes, or rather they know areas that might have nearly cost them that election had it not been for the move by the Supreme Court to nullify the same. And therefore, they clearly indicated the very day that there are specific changes that ought to be or must be done at IEBC. Of course, they'd called for a total overhaul of the commission, but that is not possible because constitutionally it is IEBC that is mandated to conduct that fresh election. Therefore, at least with some changes, the key six key changes that the Commission's chair, Wafula Chebukati, has done this evening, perhaps could in one way make NASA sort of soften their stand a bit. If you look at the host of names that they put across, that those must be removed from IEBC. Yusuf.
Of course, we'd love to talk to you even more, but we are short of time. And of course, this comes at a time when the IEBC chair has appointed a committee to oversee the rerun. But the opposition is saying the chair has remained silent about the fate of the other, officers, including the IEBC CEO Ezra Chiloba. Now, let's cross over to Tanzania, where Tanzanians have also expressed their views on the lessons learned from the Kenyan Supreme Court ruling. Our Dar es Salaam-based reporter Rajabu Hassan sought their views, and here is what they had to say.
Kwanza, mahakama imetenda haki. Demokrasia imeonyesha kabisa Afrika Mashariki inakuwa. Na tunatarajia hata sehemu zingine ambako haki ipatikane kuhusu siasa itakuwa ndio fundisho maalumu na dunia itajifunza kupitia Kenya. Na wapongeza majaji na ipongeza Kenya kwa uamuzi wa busara kabisa ambao tume ya uchaguzi ilipindisha, lakini wao kama majaji walisimama katika njia iliyonyooka na kutoa haki.
Mimi kwa maoni yangu, Kenya imeonyesha ukomavu mkubwa wa kisiasa na ni mfano wa kuigwa barani Afrika, kwa sababu nchi nyingi za Kiafrika zinaingia kwenye machafuko ya vita ya wenyewe kwa wenyewe, lakini sosi kubwa ni siasa. Hivyo viongozi wengi wa Kiafrika hawafati utaratibu, hasa kuigawa haki kwa raia.
Kilichotokea Kenya sasa hivi, manake watu tena watakuwa na imani zaidi na mahakama, kwa sababu wameona haki yao imetendeka. Hivyo
wanasheria wamejifunza mno kutokana na Kenya. Kwa hiyo ina maana sasa hivi hata Afrika Mashariki ukiachilia Tanzania, Uganda nao wamejifunza. Watu wamejifunza mno. Kwa maana ya kwamba si mtu amekuteua ndio ukasema mpendelee tu na nini. Kwa hiyo wamejifunza kila mtu kutokuogopa au kwa na nini. Ndio maoni yangu tu.
Well, those are news from neighboring Tanzania about that groundbreaking rule by the Supreme Court that invalidated the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta. Let us now shift focus to some news emerging from the southern tip of the continent. In Lesotho, authorities are investigating circumstances in which the defense force, that is LDF, Commander Hoantle Mosomoso, was assassinated by subordinates earlier this morning. Now, two suspects, Brigadier Bulen Sishele and Colonel Tefo Hashasi, were also later shot dead by commanders' bodyguards in an exchange of fire. The two led the 2015 operation that ended with the killing of former LDF commander, Lieutenant General Maparankoe Mahao. It remains unclear yet what caused the assassination. The alleged assassination happened concurrently with the arrest of an unidentified number of soldiers by the police. Now, in neighboring Uganda, the country is also dealing with a unique judicial challenge. The government is appealing to striking judges and magistrates to go back to work. Judges and magistrates abandoned courtrooms last week, complaining the government failed to improve their working conditions. They want the salaries of judges raised. Now, the Chief Justice currently earns 55 million Ugandan shillings, not Kenyan shillings. That is an equivalent of $5,290 US. They want the lowest paid magistrate to earn at least $3,600 per month. The Minister of Justice, General Kahinda Otafire, is reported to have assured the judges and magistrates that high-level consultations were underway between the judiciary and the Judicial Service Commission in a bid to address their concerns.
For a week now, activities in Ugandan courts have been paralyzed after judicial officers laid down their tools citing salary and welfare grievances. Pressed to the walls, government, working in consultation with those concerned, has announced a revision of salaries for judicial officers. To this effect, the Ministry of Public Service has up to 1 month to develop a comprehensive pay policy that harmonizes salaries across government institutions.
Cabinet directed the Ministry of Public Service to harmonize pay for all workers of government, all of them. So if we start now awarding pay increases to judicial officers only, then we are likely now to aggravate a situation that is not healthy.
The minister has now asked the striking officers to return to work as their grievances are being addressed.
We are appealing to them to resume work immediately so that they can serve the people while we sort out their problems.
Meanwhile, court users were still facing challenges getting their suits allocated to judges following the judicial officers' strike.
Court registrar says she's not able to allocate the file to a judge because those are some of the activities for which they are on strike as the judiciary.
Council Rakafuz was filing a suit seeking court orders to block demolition of the National Theatre and Normal Gallery in a development plan for the construction of twin towers.
If government and the managers of the National Theatre and the Normal Gallery decide to put commercial interest on that land, they'll be acting in a breach of the trust.
These people are disguising under renovation, but we know that they have a grand plan of demolishing, then putting those twin towers. And for us, we are saying this is not acceptable.
And if they take away the National Theatre, where will people of visual arts go, or Normal Gallery? Where will they go? It means the culture has been abused.
Now, just to tell us more on that, some sort of a unique strike in Uganda, we're now joined by Samuel Mulobe, who is a chief magistrate for Masaka district. He is also the executive member of the Uganda Judicial Officers Association. Good evening, Samuel. Now, following that strike, does it mean operations in all these courts are paralyzed? And how will you describe the talks to end the impasse? Is it fruitful?
A very good evening to you, viewers, listeners. Well, government has made commitments towards our requests, and those ones will certainly go down in helping us to improve on our services. And once they are given to us, then there is no reason we cannot deliver. Right now, the judicial officers are currently on strike, or industrial action as it's called. But somehow tomorrow we are going to meet and we map a way forward, having been, given what we really demanded before, and at least most of the things that have been requested before by the judiciary have been looked at and are likely to be given.
And now, Samuel, most people used to teach a strike, doctor strike, but now we're seeing judges on strike in Uganda. Is this the first time that the judges are going on strike in Uganda? And when was the last time that the salaries of these judges were reviewed?
Well, it's the first time I think the judiciary has had an industrial action. I would want to say that by our training, judicial officers are not quite often going on strikes, but this one went beyond board, and we had to exercise our rights under the Constitution. Probably review of the salaries. Last time they were made for judiciary and most judicial officers was way back in 1998 or thereabout. And recently, you recall, many listeners may recall that the Chief Justice and the Deputy Chief Justice were given an increment just as a by-the-way, which wasn't very right. You will recall that under the Constitution of Uganda, we are supposed to receive our emoluments from the Consolidated Fund, and the same Constitution actually directs that once an officer receives funds from the Consolidated Fund, those funds shall not be varied to their disadvantage. What has been taking place in this country, for instance, has been a reduction of what we take home. For instance, at one point, we had 0.6 of the budget. Now, currently, we have 0.145 of the budget. Now, certainly, 0.6 to 0.45 varies the emoluments to a judicial officer's disadvantage.
Many thanks, Samuel, for that. That was Samuel Mulabe joining us from Uganda. Samuel is the Chief Magistrate for Masaka District, who is saying talks are going to end that very unique strike by the judges in Uganda. Now, South Africa's Constitutional Court has begun hearing a case by opposition parties seeking to impeach President Jacob Zuma for failing to uphold the Constitution. Now, the Constitutional Court, in a statement, said the application was brought by the EFF, the UDM and COP against National Assembly Speaker Baleka Mbete and Zuma for various orders directed against them. Now, the orders include one declaring that Mbete failed to put in place all appropriate procedures and mechanisms to hold Zuma accountable following the president's failure to implement recommendations in the former public protector's report into Nkandla in 2014. Now, the Secretary General of South Africa's Economic Freedom Fighters opposition party says President Jacob Zuma has failed as a leader.
Impeachment process. The inquiry will reach a determination as to whether the president should be removed or not. And that report of that inquiry will be tabled in Parliament for debate. And once debated, there could be a possibility of unanimity at the committee that the president actually has grossly misconducted himself.
Now, in Rwanda, police say they have released a prominent opposition leader who they are investigating for fraud. Diana Rwigara, her mother and sister, disappeared from their home a week ago. Relatives say the family has returned home, but their phones have been seized and bank accounts are frozen. Rwigara is accused of using fraudulent signatures when she was gathering support for this year's presidential election. She was disqualified from running. Her family members have been accused of tax evasion. The police say they have not completed their investigations. Well, those are some developments from Rwanda. If you're just joining us, this is Bottomline Africa right here on KTN News, where we are discussing the role of youth in transforming leadership in Africa. We'll come back with a studio interview that is a very youthful interview, I must say, of Catherine Nyambura, George Gashara, as well as Samantha Maina. We're going to link up with the president of Young African Leaders Initiative, that is Andrew Ntewewe. He's going to come to us all the way from Zambia. Well, this is Bottomline Africa. We're going to take a very short break, but we'll be right back. Don't go too far.